get in the frame of the...
Sorry, Lynn. So it doesn't work. If everybody sees this happening, that there would be so few people in this room that have actually participated in it, okay? So that's kind of like just saying to you, you got to go with human nature, all right? You have to, if you want to be a good forensic accountant, you have to go with human nature. It just doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense for a reason, and that's worth investigating. My very first case, Gary was the manager on this case. Imagine this, as a young guy, this was incredible, fortuitous. So I'm going out with this young lady in London, Ontario, and I'm driving home, the 401, and I'm listening to the radio. And across the radio, there's this warning, and there's this announcement on the radio, and all hell's breaking loose. And basically what happens is this, okay? There has been a situation where Good Samaritans stopped, okay, apparently for stranded motorists. When they stop, they're robbed. There's a daytime robbery on the side of the highway. Present are a husband, a wife, a nephew, and the bad guys. So I'm listening to this on the radio, and they say, the wife's been shot and killed, the bad guys have driven away. And I'm going, hang on. So the husband's there, and the nephew's still there. Yeah, right. It doesn't work. And it, of course, didn't work. And that started, obviously, a murder is going to get the police motivated to investigate. And it started an incredible lengthy investigation. I could spend my whole time just talking for 2 hours about that case alone. It was a fascinating case called the Bucksbaum homicide. Everyone in London, that whole area, it's still a legend down that area. And a massive investigation where there were people who were basically hired to hit the wife, okay? But it's one of those, yeah, right. I'm listening on the radio. There's no way. And I end up investigating the thing. I worked on a case involving theft. So a junior whistleblower reports up into internal audit that there's apparently some embezzling going on by a senior VP. Now, internal audit takes a look and finds nothing unusual. Yeah, right. We get called in as forensic accountants, and I'm like, it's unfortunate because I knew the guy. And I'm listening to the story, and I'm like, okay, you just seem pretty quick to dismiss it as out of hand. Like it just, and it's a very uncomfortable thing. You're dealing with somebody you know, and they're internal audit, and they're supposed to be good at what they do. And so I go, well, okay, maybe that person's got motivations, whatever. But call me crazy. Let's just do one simple thing here. And what the thing's about is, there's basically this allegation, as I said, of embezzling, and there's purchasing of a product. Okay, and in the end, what I identify, I'm given the names of certain supplier files, which may be the ones that there might be some embezzling. I'm like, okay, give me those files. Give me the complete files of the purchasing records on those companies, and I'm flipping through, right? Like a basic junior auditor would do. And I'm looking, and I go, call me crazy, but I don't see any receiving slips here. So I got an invoice, I don't see any receiving slips. There's no receiving slips here. How about we just do this little simple exercise? How about if it's okay with you, I call the supplier and ask them, we seem to be missing some records here. Do you mind sending those in to me? Here's fax them in. Take a look. They're deliveries to the senior vice president's house. How hard was that to get paid on an engagement? How basic in terms of skepticism is just like common everyday stuff. It's junior person who reports through whistleblower. If you want to blow it up in terms of your whistleblower program and ensure that nothing ever happens, discourage somebody who's telling you something, and you don't do basic stuff. It was quite simple in terms of doing it. I had a fraud case. Thought I'd highlight just different cases for you. And this was a situation where there was a sale of an interest in a business, a pretty big sale. There were 3 people involved, a young guy with his family. He owned a very small part-time. He was active in the business. There was a wealthy owner from Europe who was a passive partner, and he put a lot of money into the business. And there was a guy who had owned this thing forever and wanted to kind of sell. Anyway, long story short, the guy who was the guy who ran the business, who was the older guy who convinced these other guys to buy in, he was a badass. The town knew he was a badass. He had a constant reputation of doing things, very sharp edge dealer. So I get involved in this thing in terms of looking into it. And first of all, what happens in the beginning is there are representations of the profitability of these things to these other guys that are convinced and decide to invest in it. And soon after they get involved and buy into this thing, it becomes pretty apparent that these promises, these representations of profitability, they're not nearly close. That's a pretty good indicator that there's probably something wrong in the whole thing. Just like everything's consistently overstated. Again, this is the case I could talk to you about for hours. The concern, as time goes on, what I end up seeing through this process is I'm seeing the growing of the shareholder loan account for the favor of this guy who sold to these 2 other people. It's just growing and growing and growing, and there's these things that he's supposedly involved in putting money into the business. And these things, well, like, okay, well, I brought in this asset from this country and this and this and this. And in the end, what I did was a very thorough analysis of the shareholder loan account. And by the way, nothing had been identified by the external account. No, nothing suspicious, nothing at all. What had happened is this guy had had a pattern of bringing young families in from a foreign country to Canada to work and maybe be prospective of the owners, the business, okay? He did this on a recurring basis, and he would treat the families as they came in just horribly, ruthlessly, just be so unfair to them, and just unbelievable, very bright, capable people that were deceived and lied to, basically, in terms of an investment. And so this went on and on and on for years and years and years. And just to say to you that I decided that I was going to go deep into this shareholder loan account. And I was going to do whatever it took to see. Because it didn't sound right to me. And long story short, this is old classic stuff I ended up finding on this. He took invoices for companies that, for purchases that he supposedly purchased, or someone purchased. He had someone from Germany come and bring this thing with them. He took the invoice, this was back in old days. He took the invoice and literally took a typewriter and added a 0 to the purchase of whatever it was that these people brought with them to give himself an extra $10,000 to his shareholder loan account. So, long story short, I'm going after everything I can possibly find. I go back, because as I said, there have been a whole bunch of families that had come in and been mistreated. One of those families had relocated to Alberta. This is 20 years earlier. I phoned this guy up. He jumps as high as the moon. He can't believe this. He says, I've been waiting 20 years for this call. I've been waiting 20 years for this call. Long story short, this guy, the judge basically took my report, put the whole thing in his judgment. It was a fantastic result. And this guy ended up leaving town and off to Florida he went. So, but it just like something that was just like, it wasn't believable. And the people that I met, the family that I met, can you imagine the family that I met that had brought, the husband had convinced the whole family, the kids and everything, let's go to Canada, let's go to Canada. The wife cried to my wife, you know, in terms of when we first got there to investigate this thing. Embezzlement, school board, this is a different type of case. So this one's a little more simple. I'll just cut to it for the board's concerns over missing funds, okay? Forensic accountants called in, large investigation, which identifies that basically in the school board, they had a special program that they were doing, and they're taking in all this money. No one was doing something as simple as taking a look at the money they took in to the number of students enrolled in the program. I mean, you're kidding me, right? I'm serious. This is a major board. They hadn't done this. When we went in and did which you'll do, all of us have done it, a nighttime search, okay, of the accountant's office or whoever's office. Imagine this, the person who's doing this, the manager who's doing this, her office was locked, special key. Her desk was locked, special key. So we have the guys who are the night staff and basically with the senior person of the board, basically, come on, open it up, open it up. There's 25 grand of cash in the manager's desk. Imagine that, the school board, 25 grand in cash that were hers, basically, cut of the tuition on this special program. Okay. History repeats itself as often, and that's because obviously the first time around, lessons not learned. I remember going to the States. They would try to recruit me to go down there. I was searching it out. I got involved in an engagement. It actually had something, not 80s, but sort of soon thereafter, and savings and loan. And I just thought I'd show you this because, you know, there's been obviously, we all know about like every sort of 10 years, you know, 1980s, 1990s, 2000s, you know, The Big Short, the movie there. Well, savings and loan, the reasons apparently, okay, were so simple as the savings and loans companies in the 1980s in the south of the US were charged the same insurance premiums regardless of their risk. Yeah, right. Like, that's not going to cause a problem at all, right? Like, that doesn't have a predictability factor, just in the most simple of ways. Mike Duffy, I helped design programs for the Auditor General in terms of training their people, okay? Great, committed people, wanting to do well. It was pretty easy to tell in terms of trying to develop training programs for them. This is years ago, that they had challenges in terms of the actual specificity and definitions of things as to what's wrong and what's kind of okay, gray area. There's way too much gray area, okay, in terms of what anything we try to do to educate them in terms of what they need to get to be able to do forensic accounting investigations. When Mike Duffy first broke, I'm going, yeah, right, there's going to be a conviction here. I mean, the first government witness says rules are subject to interpretation. Why wasn't it shut down right there? It was over right there, okay? I mean, it's so common sense. All right, so Wells Fargo. I just love this because it's current, and I can't believe this. These guys have screwed up at least 3 or 4 times in a massively big way, and they come out most recently with this brilliant decision as their go forward. Like, okay, this is the 3rd time, right, but we're going to be different this time. So we really own it this time. It's a new day at Wells Fargo, but it's a lot like our first day. Your first day was not very good. Your second day was not very good. So that you don't own anything by saying this. That's ridiculous, okay? For trying to get out and get people believing in you. I watched these guys. I don't know if any of you watched this. I watched them this past summer up at a massive congressional hearing, right? And it's just like, I just can't believe these senior guys thinking that they're relatable to any average American. Nobody would believe these guys. Okay, one thing I want to tell you, interviewing. Lots of senior people here. Okay, who should do an interview? Let me tell you something very simple about an interview. If you want to have success in an interview, you need to really like people. If you don't like people, you're the wrong person to do an interview. Okay? Just take that to the bank. I don't care if it's a junior person, if they're relatable, okay? If they're a good person, if they like people, have them do the interview, not you. They'll do much better. Takeaways from today. All humans are created with common sense and intuition. Don't subvert human trait. Don't subvert it. Too many times I see in investigations that people who have worked or were involved or didn't realize, they subvert their human intuition. Okay? I have an extremely over-heightened, obviously, having done this for so very long. Observe body language. Listen to changes in tonality. When I do an interview, I am looking at so many things. Sometimes overtly, sometimes not at all. Sometimes head down, sometimes just a whole bunch of stuff I'll do. Okay? In terms of just, sometimes I'll look away, and then when I know, by the way, in most interviews, you should know all the answers to their questions before you do it, if you can. And there have been times. And at one point I said to somebody, listen, you can probably realize by this point in time that I already know all the answers to the questions. So we could keep going. I mean, it's up to you. And that's what got the breakdown basically after 30 seconds. But if you know you're right in an interview and you know you've got all your stuff, right? At some point you kind of, and then you just look right at them. You look right at them and you just wait and wait and wait, right? So there you go. There's some things to help you out.